Now, as you can see that it is a neural tube. So what happens? Caudal to fourth somite place, that the neural tube will form the spinal cord, and cranial to this it will give rise to brain vesicle. So see what happens next. Now that brain dilatation of the cranial end will give rise to three primary vesicles. So among them, this is the prosencephalon, this is the mesencephalon, and this is the rhombencephalon. This is forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, right? Okay, move towards the next picture being labeled. Okay, now what happens? This tubular spinal cord and rest of the brain vesicle, they will not remain erect, rather they will be showing various curves. So the first curve, which is known as cephalic flexure, is present along with this mesencephalon. Then we see there is another cervical flexure in between the rhombencephalon and the future spinal cord. Okay, now what next? Now you see that within this rhombencephalon there is a development of the pontine flexure that will divide this rhombencephalon into metencephalon and the myelencephalon. Metencephalon is the future pons and cerebellum, and the myelencephalon will give rise to the medulla oblongata. Okay. Okay, as you can see, this is the lateral view of a developing embryo. So we can see the prosencephalon will give rise to the telencephalon and the diencephalon, right? And we see the mesencephalon will remain as such. Then there will be the development of the rhombencephalic isthmus in between the mesencephalon and the rhombencephalon. And what next you see? That there is the pontine flexure that will divide the metencephalon from the myelencephalon. This pontine flexure will definitely be the first step towards the formation of the fourth ventricle, right? And we see the cervical flexure in between the rhombencephalon and the spinal cord. So let's see what next. Now again a picture to make you clear that this is the prosencephalon showing the developed cerebral cortex, and we see the diencephalon here. This is the mesencephalon. So this was the cephalic flexure, right? And this area is showing the pontine flexure and dividing the metencephalon from the myelencephalon, and this is the cervical flexure. Okay. Okay, this picture will show you that the forebrain or prosencephalon carries a cavity which is lateral ventricle, and this is mesencephalon that will hold the cerebral aqueduct. And now we have got the rhombencephalon that will be having the fourth ventricle. Let's see here again. So this is the forebrain, the telencephalon and diencephalon. The telencephalon will be holding the lateral ventricles. So there are two lateral ventricles, right? And we see the diencephalon future thalamus that will hold the third ventricle, and they will communicate with each other through the interventricular foramen of Monro. Then you see the midbrain that carries the aqueduct of Sylvius, right? Then you see the rhombencephalon, the meten and the myelencephalon, they will be having the fourth ventricle. And of course the spinal cord that has the central canal. Now see within the transverse section of the spinal cord that how spinal cord is showing various layers. The innermost lining, this is the central canal, so the innermost lining forms a zone known as the ependymal zone or germinal zone or ventricular zone that is well laden with the pseudostratified columnar epithelial cells. The primitive neuronal cells, they will give rise to neuroblast and they will mature into the neurons. Okay, these neurons will migrate to this next layer called as mental zone. So all the neurons are being collected here and few neuroglia would be there and it will form the gray matter. And then on its margins there is another layer known as marginal zone that will carry the neuroglia and all the axonal fibers of these neurons. So that forms the white matter. So we have got ventricular zone, the mental zone, and the marginal zone, right? So now you can well see that the ependymal zone is showing the epithelium, giving rise to the next layer, the mental zone, the gray matter, and the marginal zone that is forming the white matter. Now again, see that those zones, among them, the mental zone is differentiated dorsally into the LR plates. These are the sensory plates. And you can see that it also differentiate ventrally into two basal plates. These are motor plates. They both are divided through a sulcus called as sulcus limitans. And we can see that there lies a roof plate. That roof plate doesn't carry any neurons, rather they will be having the axonal fibers in it. And this is the floor plate. Now see what happens in the medulla oblongata, right? So initially this is the spinal cord, this is the rhombencephalon, or I would say combined meton and myelencephalon, and this is the mesencephalon. So see what happens to the roof plate of this I would say myelencephalon. It will be stretched laterally due to the formation of pontine flexure, because it is causing the thinning of the roof plate to form the fourth ventricle. So see, if we remove this roof, we can have the fourth ventricle. So if I place my pencil here, you can see this is the lower portion of the fourth ventricle being formed or contributed by the myelencephalon, and above my pencil this portion is the upper part of the fourth ventricle being contributed by the metencephalon, right? Okay, again we are looking into the caudal portion of the medulla oblongata, showing the LR plates dorsally and basal plates ventrally, and these are the sulcus limitans. This is the roof plate, this is the floor plate. The roof plate is supposed to be stretched laterally and it will open like a book, right? So let's see what happens. So being stretched up, so what this causes, they are supposed to be stretched up in this roof plate, this area, and the migration of LR plate ventrolaterally to the basal plate on both sides. So now we know the reason that why this gray matter comes anterolaterally in the cranial part of your medulla oblongata, which is the open part of the medulla oblongata. So let's see previous picture, that is the closed part or caudal part of the medulla oblongata, in which you see a complete central canal, and this is the most cranial or rostral portion of the medulla oblongata, right? And it is showing the gray matter anteriorly and laterally, and we can see the wider cavity of the fourth ventricle. Now we can see various changes taking place from the caudal to the cranial end of the medulla oblongata. See, these are the, if I can enlarge the view, yes, these are the LR plates and these are the basal plates. As being the roof plate, this roof plate is supposed to be stretched up, so LR plates are migrated anterolaterally, right, to these basal plates. So see what happens next. Now concentrate, very important picture. You can see these are the LR plates, these are the basal plates. Now concentrate on this picture, the LR plates on both sides, the lateral part are projected forward to that of the basal plate, and they will be giving rise to the inferior olivary nucleus on both sides. So keep in mind that these olivary nuclei are derived from the lateral part of the LR plates, right? So one another important thing, that similar thing happens regarding pontine, that the lateral part of your LR plate will give rise or ascend towards the Myelencephalon in the pons region. It will be producing pontine nuclei. So we can call it as bulbopontine extension, in which the upward extension will form the pontine nuclei and the downward extension is going to form the inferior olivary nuclei. Now among them, again a picture is showing you that these are the LR plates laterally and these are the basal plates. These are the motor plates and these are the sensory plates. Okay. Now we have to concentrate. Let me make this picture a little bit more enlarged so that we can have a view. Now you can see this is the basal plate and both these plates are showing the functional components of the cranial nerve. As we know that the spinal nerves are showing four basic general functional components. Among them, we have got two visceral and two somatic, but all of them are general. And among those, two are afferent and two are efferent. So these four are definitely will be a part of your cranial nerve. So means that all the general sensations are carried not only by the spinal nerves but by the cranial nerve as well. All the cranial nerves are taking part mostly in it. But three special components are also added in the cranial nerves. So among them, let's see what they could be. The special somatic afferent, the special visceral afferent, and the special visceral efferent. These are three new columns that are added regarding your cranial nerves. We have discussed them in detail in my other video, right? So now you can see again. Let me make a clear view so that you can see the picture clearly. So you can see the four afferent of this LR plate and three efferent functional component of the basal plate, right? Okay, what next? Now in this picture, again you can see that if this is the spinal cord, you can see the posterior LR plate and this is the basal plate. This is showing the efferent component of the spinal nerve and these are the afferent component. So among them, they all are general, but the general somatic afferent, the general visceral afferent, this is the general visceral efferent, and this is the general somatic efferent. And what happens that how they are arranged due to the stretching of the roof plate, they have approached ventrolaterally on both sides in the form of LR plate. Now move to the next. Again a picture showing you the arrangement of the LR plates and their functional components. Now this picture will make you remember that we are looking into a picture of the medulla oblongata, and this is the spinal cord, this is the pons, this is the midbrain region. So let's have a look of the cranial nerve being attached here. The above region, the first nerve will be the olfactory nerve. Next to it, we have got the optic nerve. Then we see the oculomotor nerve and we observe the trochlear nerve. Then we see the trigeminal nerve in the pons. And here we have got the abducent nerve. Then we see the facial nerve and the vestibulocochlear nerve. Now comes towards the glossopharyngeal nerve. Next to it is the vagus nerve. Then you see the accessory nerve having its cranial part which is being run along with the 10th cranial nerve and the spinal part that originates from the C5 cervical segment C5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They all are making the smaller part of the accessory nerve. And last but not the least, you see the exit of this hypoglossal nerve from the anterolateral sulcus of the on the back of these pyramids, right? So what next? This is the functional component we can observe on the floor of the fourth ventricle. Even above we can see the area of the midbrain in which you can see the third cranial nerve nucleus, which is oculomotor. Its other nucleus is Edinger-Westphal, which is parasympathetic. Then we see the motor nucleus of the trochlear nerve. Then in the same line in the red color we see the abducens nerve nucleus, which is in the pons. Now concentrate on the hypoglossal nucleus, which is present in the medulla oblongata. Now lateral to them, what do you see in the blue color? This is the motor nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Now concentrate that we have got seventh cranial nerve nucleus, the facial nucleus, right? And another important thing in the blue color is showing the nucleus ambiguous. And you know what? It is made up of or via the contribution of three cranial nerves, which are 9th, 10th and 11th, right? Okay. Then you see on its lateral aspect the dorsal nucleus of vagus. Okay. Next to it, you observe the nucleus of the tractus solitarius in purple color, and it is formed by the contribution of the 7th, 9th and 10th cranial nerve. Now concentrate on the most longest nucleus present throughout the brainstem. I would say that is the nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. This is the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve originating from the C1 spinal segment. Then you see the main sensory nucleus, and this is in the spinal cord, and this main sensory nucleus is you can see present in the fourth ventricle. Now you can see its mesencephalic nucleus, right? These three shown in green color are sensory nucleus, and this blue one is the motor nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Now concentrate on the nuclei of the eighth cranial nerve, its vestibular nuclei, the superior, inferior, medial and lateral, and these are ventral and dorsal cochlear nuclei, right? This is very important picture to show you the arrangement of various cranial nerves. So you can very well see the labeling. This 12th cranial nerve is making somatic efferent functional component. The nucleus ambiguous, which is formed by these three cranial nerves, is giving rise to special visceral efferent component. Then we see the dorsal nucleus of vagus, that is contributing the general visceral efferent component. Then we see that there lies the nucleus of tractus solitarius, giving rise to visceral afferent component, general and special. Okay, now again let me show you the visceral, afferent, general and special in the purple color of the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. Then this spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve. This trigeminal nerve is contributing the general somatic afferent component of the cranial nerve. These are the functional components. Now this picture is again very important to make you clear. The lowermost is the cross section of the medulla oblongata. This is of the pons and this is of the midbrain. So if you approach ventrally, these are the transverse sections, and if you are looking on this picture, this is basically the vertical column arrangement in a sagittal view. So you can very well see bilateral presence of these nuclei. In the very center, you can see the motor nerve nuclei, the third cranial nerve, the fourth, which are in the midbrain. Then you see the sixth cranial nerve nuclei, which is in the pons, and then the 12th cranial nerve nuclei, which is in the medulla oblongata. Now next to them, laterally, you see the fifth cranial nerve nuclei in the pons, the seventh cranial nerve nuclei. Okay, now see, yes, after this seventh, we can have in the same column the 9th and the 10th cranial nerve, and of course the 11th cranial nerve. So, okay, let me show you a bigger view of this. Okay, now let me show you The blue one on both sides, this is the third, this is the fourth in the midbrain, this is the sixth in the pons, this is the 12th in the medulla, right? Now the nuclei you can see in this column are the 5th, 7th, which are in the pons, then 9th, 10th, and 11th, which are in the medulla, and the cranial, its spinal part is in the spinal cord. Now move towards its more lateral side. You can see this 7th cranial nerve nuclei, then 9th cranial nerve, then 10th cranial nerve nuclei, right? And on most lateral side, the 7th, 9th, and 10th, this is basically forming the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. Now, in this way, the arrangement of the various cranial nerve nuclei are shown vertically, so never get confused that why they are shown here in a vertical way and why they are being shown here in a transverse section, right?